Hi, everyone, and welcome to another amazing, fantastic, extraordinary, fantastic presentation for our event. I am super excited that we are having today with us Steve Robbins, who is, I've been looking over his CV, dude, I'm telling you, it's so much, it's a mouthful, it's 3 mouthfuls in one, because he's been doing so much in the world of business and coaching and NLP. I'm gonna give you a few ideas about who he is, and then he will of course, start to enlighten us with his knowledge. So he's a management consultant and an executive coach. He's been doing this for over 35 years. He holds an MBA from the Harvard Business School and also a BS, which stands for Bachelor's in Science in Computer Sciences from MIT. So he's graduate from both Harvard and MIT. He's also a graduate of W. Edward Deming's Total Quality Management Training Program, Harvard Law School Negotiation and Mediation course, and like I said, a certified master trainer elite of NLP. He also has written a couple of books. One of them is called "It Takes a Lot More of Attitude to Lead a Stellar Organization," and "Get It Done, Guys: 9 Steps to Work Less and Do More." He is among top 10 iTunes business podcaster for 10 years. So if you go on iTunes and look for business podcasting, you'll find him right there at the top. He's a co-founder of 2 companies and initial member of several more. He has hundreds of media appearances, including Harvard Business Review, Wall Street Journal, Investors Business, Daily, Newsweek, Fast Company. He's also a Burning Man fanatic, among other things. And like I said, he's got so much going on. He appeared on MSNBC, ABC, News Now, the New York Times, Fox News, Business Week Online, and so many others. I'm going to stop here because I just wanted you to understand that Steve is game. He's got his knowledge in his back pocket, and he is going to talk to us today. He's going to show us, he's going to explain to us a Harvard MBA business school approach to coaching. So Steve, thank you so much for saying yes to our invitation. I'm super excited that you're here, and I'm looking so much forward to learning from you.
I am absolutely delighted. Thank you so much for having me. I do feel the need to correct one thing that you said. Yes, in the bio. I am no longer a top 10 iTunes business podcast. I stepped down in 2020, but from 2007 to 2020, I was the host of the Get It Done Guy podcast, which is a podcast on personal productivity.
Awesome. Well, thank you. I'll let that pass.
All right.
That's perfect. Thank you.
So, so first of all, my experience is pretty broad and pretty deep at the same time, which makes it hard to know where to start. I know that we're talking about NLP and coaching and business. And what I would like to do is choose some slice of that can be most useful, or at least most intriguing for people, so that it can give the people watching this, hi people watching this, so they can give you some idea of where to begin if you're somebody who coaches business people or who's interested in business. So let's see where to start. Oh, and I guess there is one more thing that we didn't mention in the bio, but it's relevant to this topic, which is that I helped redesign the Harvard MBA curriculum back when they had a big curriculum redesign effort. So that led me to ask a question, right? Now, everyone watching this, you're all NLP people, so think about this question for a minute. Here is a list of what we believe makes a good executive and a good manager. Create a curriculum to make someone into that. Right? I'm going to reframe this in NLP terms. What they were saying was, here's what we want to produce in terms of behavior, in terms of values, in terms of mental approaches to business. Create a curriculum that creates that in someone. So what they wanted was strategies, mental cognitive strategies, which given to people would enable them to perform as top executives. And what we had to do as the design team was create a set of experiences that would install those strategies, again, NLP talk, that would install those strategies in our students. Did we do this? We did parts of it. Let's just say that academia is a very interesting place when it comes to designing experiential learning. But as a result, a lot of the coaching and the approach that I have to business is informed not just by Harvard Business School, the actual substance of the curriculum, knowing what the content is of the curriculum, but also by the ways that we we're brainstorming and the ways that we designed to develop skills in people.
Got it.
So if you like, I'll just start talking, and
yes, please.
I'm going to count on you to interrupt me, to take me down useful paths. Because like I said, I'm sitting here thinking like, okay, I could give an entire overview of business from top to bottom. I don't think that would be useful, but my brain just starts going. So, fundamental to coaching business people, and I mainly coach executives, people at the VP level and above. Fundamental to that is understanding what their job is. Because as an NLP practitioner or master practitioner, what you are doing is, in essence, helping to understand what their current strategies are and how they approach the job, and then help them install new ones. And that's all that it is you're going to use the meta model to challenge their beliefs, and you are then going to challenge their beliefs or to reinforce their beliefs. I mean, once you find out, if they've got the right approach, leave it. So that kind of leads us to the question of what is the right approach? And that's what I'll spend some time talking about here.
Awesome.
Executives, and I'm now speaking largely the executive level here. When people are at the executive level, they have two sets of responsibilities. They have a responsibility to actually deliver on the day-to-day projects that the company is undertaking. And they also have the responsibility to have a longer-term point of view where they are shaping the business in the direction that the company wants to go. Let's say that you're a company like, I'm going to use Johnson & Johnson just because I happen to know off the top of my head, but let's say you're Johnson & Johnson. Johnson & Johnson, if you look at their website, their mission basically is to produce research-validated tools to improve the well-being of patients and medical professionals. That is, they'll call that a vision statement or a mission statement. And you'll recognize that in NLP language, that's like an identity statement, right? What that does is that lets you separate the world into two sets of things. It lets you separate the world into, here are the things the company should be doing, and here are the things the company should not be doing. So among the things they should be doing is research validated tools that help increase medical outcomes. What they should not be doing is acquiring a chain of fast food restaurants and developing the new, amazing, incredible taco. Now, if a company does not have some sort of unifying vision or mission statement at the top, then, among other things, the executives' jobs will be harder because the executives don't have that critical tool to be able to make decisions about what isn't appropriate action. So one of the first things that I will often do with a company is seek to understand, or with an executive, is seek to understand what their conception is of the purpose of the company. And what I'm looking for, again, I'm not looking for this mystical, vision statements or these things that will take us to the land of milk and honey. Great. Land of milk and honey sounds awesome. Once you get there, send me an invitation. But what I'm looking for is actual concrete, this executive needs a decision-making strategy such that the decisions they make are lined up in the same direction as all the other executives. So that's one of the things that I'm really big on is understanding what is the top level decision criteria of executives in a company, and that's going to be the mission or the vision statement. Something I want to note about mission and vision statements is good ones are timeless. When J&J says we produce research validated tools to produce patient outcome or to increase patient outcomes, that statement holds true in the 1910s if what they're producing is gauze. And it holds true in 2023 if what they're producing is extremely advanced MRI machines. So a vision or a mission should be framed in a way that it's not attached to a particular time period. Then at the next level, what you have is a strategy. And a strategy is, given this vision or mission, and given where we are today, given who our competitors are, given the regulatory environment, given the people issues, the things that we have, the resources we have as a company, how do we turn that vision into products and services that are profitable today? So in the case of J&J in 1910, the answer to the question is our strategy is going to be producing gauze. Why? Because in 1910, and by the way, I'm making this up. I don't know if this is historically accurate. Because in 1910, maybe no one else is producing gauze. But if everyone else, if there were already 100 brands of gauze on the market, then the strategy for J&J, same mission, research validated tools, but the strategy might have been, you know what, we're not going to make gauze, but what we are going to make is syringes. So because no one else is making syringes, so that we can take that market. So the strategy says, given the vision or the mission of the company, and given today's competitors, today's products on the market, today's technology, given the capabilities the company currently has, what should the company be doing in the market, in its product selection, et cetera, to be able to realize that vision in the world today? Now, the vision is completely discretionary. The vision is something that the company and the founders and the executive team makes up. There's no right answer to what the vision is. So the vision is something that has to come from within, and people need to buy into that. The strategy does come from analysis, because the strategy is, how do you reach that vision given the realities of the world? Once you have a strategy lined up, then it's just, okay, if what we're going to do is produce gauze, now let's actually find out, how are we going to produce gauze? How are we going to market our gauze versus the other gauze in the marketplace, et cetera? At that point, it becomes, I don't want to say mechanical exactly, but at that point, it becomes much more well defined.
Automated at some point,
Yeah, it's, you can kind of deduce answers, or you can gather data to help you make decisions. But at those upper levels, at the first level, what's the vision? That's totally up to, that's discretionary. That's up to you. And then the strategy is, you have to do an analysis to say, how are we going to make this, how do we think we're going to be able to win in the market with this current vision? And then once you know we're going to produce gauze, now you can say, okay, do we want to outsource the manufacture? Do we want to do it ourselves? Do we want to build plants, et cetera, et cetera? And so that from there on down, it's pretty, I want to say, textbook business school stuff. So if you're working with an executive, one of the things to get clear on is, which of those things do they control, and which of those things are given to them? So they may be told, here's our vision and here's our strategy, execute this strategy. But I strive, when I'm working with an individual, to make sure that they know those things and that their understanding of it aligns with the rest of the company. And by the way, an awful lot of the time, companies do not have any kind of unified vision or strategy. It's one of the reasons that they might hire a coach. As an individual, when you're coaching somebody, they don't necessarily have the ability to produce that consensus, but you can coach them to recognize that there might not be strategic consensus, or there may not be vision mission consensus, and your coaching to them becomes, go and establish this, go have conversations, raise the question, so that when you do your stuff, you are aligned with other people, and overall the company produces the results that it wants. If
so
those things,
let me ask you this here, talking about vision and mission and so on. Is it better or worse to have, let's say, is it better to have a truncated, if you will, or a crooked vision or mission than not have one at all?
Well, if you don't have one at all, you run the risk of people being at cross purposes. So your marketing department or your sales department might be promising people a pen that is also a flashlight, but your product development people might be developing a pen that writes in 4 different colors. Both could be useful, but unless you're aligned, you're going to end up wasting time and resources, and either you're going to produce the flashlight pen and then your salespeople won't be prepared to sell it, or they're selling this flashlight pen and then the product rolling off the line doesn't have a flashlight in it. So with no mission and no vision at all, you can end up with some real right hand, left hand, not knowing what they're doing. And it's funny because people say, oh, that's a ridiculous example. It's surely companies wouldn't be that bizarre. And I'm like, well, Google has like 9 different voice and messaging systems. I have to have Google Chat and Google Voice both on my phone, because some people use Google Chat and some people use Google Voice, and they're both instant messaging type services, right? And then there's Google Mail, and then there used to be Google Plus, and et cetera, et cetera. So the answer is, actually, this kind of stuff does happen very much. If you have now, when you said like a twisted vision, do you mean one that's just poorly implemented, like like
poorly
our vision,
implemented, or even poorly expressed, like my vision, let's say, the CEO of the company says, our vision is to be the best in the market.
Right.
You know,
Right. Which is a useless.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, so as you know, right, we know from NLP that outcomes have well-formedness decision. Outcomes have well-formedness conditions, right? Stated in the positive, testable, etc.
Yeah.
You can think of vision statements as also having well-formedness conditions. Now, I'll be honest, until your question, I hadn't thought about this. So I'm going to try to articulate them on the fly. So
Perfect.
one is the vision is so what you just said is we're going to be best in the market, right? The problem is that's a strategy. And by the way, that's not actually it's also not specific enough to be a strategy, but that's at the strategic level, because saying we're going to be best relative to the market, that's not timeless. That's saying, given who the market is today, we're going to be the best. That's not a vision. That's at the best, that could never be anything higher than a strategy.
So
However,
we could say, just hold your thought, just a minute. I want to get this clear. So you would say that vision should be timeless. Is that correct?
Vision should be timeless. Yep.
Okay.
Vision should be timeless. Strategy should be relative to the conditions in which you are realizing the vision. So strategy is relative to the current time. And then tactics and processes and standard operating procedures, those are all relative to whatever strategies you're implementing. You're going to have a very different set of tactics if you're outsourcing your manufacturing than if you're doing your manufacturing in-house and you own your own manufacturing facilities. So those will determine what your standard operating processes are. Shall I continue?
Yeah. I just wanted to make that clear. So now I'm clear.
Sure.
Thank you.
So if your vision is we're going to be the best in the market, there's a couple problems. So one of the tests for a vision is you have to be able to use it to decide what to do and what not to do. There is no business idea that would be excluded by the statement we're going to be the best in the market. So it can't be used in any practical way to choose a strategy. Right, because we're going to be the best in the market. Does that mean we're going to be the best at making glasses? Does it mean we're going to be the best at making pens? What market are we going to be the best at? So a vision has to be specific enough that you can use it to say yes or no. Now, what does it have to be specific about? I'm going to give you a little laundry list of things, and I don't think it has to be specific about all of them, but it has to be specific about at least one or two of them. It either has to identify who the market is, or it has to identify the broad product category. Or maybe the geography. It has to do something that actually draws that line so that people can decide what's inside and what's outside. So, for example, if you had a vision that said we are going, let's start with industry. That the Johnson & Johnson one says we produce research validated medical tools, right? That actually says here's the industry we're in. We're not in fast food. We're not in something else. So in that case, the vision at least draws the line and says we're going to be oriented around a particular industry. Now, you could also consider a company like 3M, Minnesota Manufacturing and Mining, which does all kinds of things, almost very few of which have to do with mining anymore, as far as I know. But 3M relies a lot. Now, I don't know this for sure. This is my view from the outside, so I don't know whether these are the conversations they have internally. But 3M relies very much on their innovation abilities to do technological advancement. So their vision, and again, I want to be clear, I'm making this up. I don't know that this is 3M's vision, but what I would deduce on the fly, it would be something along the lines of innovating with novel manufacturing processes, or innovating novel manufactured goods. But it doesn't specify anything more than that, because they do everything from heavy machinery to posted pads. So 3M at this point, the commonality for them is we do stuff that is involved in high level manufacturing. They're not going to be producing chat apps or software, is my guess. That they're going to stay out of that, because they've drawn their circle around the process they use, manufacturing. You could also, so that's industry. You would also draw a line around a particular market. So you could say, okay, we as a company are going to satisfy the needs of secretaries. We're going to make, if they even have secretaries anymore, we're going to make secretaries' lives more efficient. So, so let me go back to my fantasized 1950s model of what a secretary did. So what we're going to do is we're going to produce staplers that can staple 100 pages at once. We're going to produce steno pads. We're going to produce pens that you can actually write with faster. We're going to produce electric typewriters. Now, those are all different, very different kinds of products. However, they are all products that satisfy the circle of, is this something that makes a secretary's life easier? And that's really the test that you want to be asking from your vision statement, is does it actually draw a circle that lets you say, these are the things that are inside of our area of expertise, and these are the things that are outside our area of I don't want to say of expertise, are outside our area of business. And the more specific you are, right, potentially the smaller the market, but the more you can become the go-to solution for that particular market or for that particular competency, right? I mean, consider the self-driving car market right now, right? There are only a handful of companies doing self-driving cars. Those companies, assuming that the important part of their vision is the self-driving piece, right? And some of them, like Tesla's, it's both self-driving and it's electric vehicles. So there's a mashup of those features. But the self-driving piece, that depends on very, very highly specialized kinds of employees, people who can do very sophisticated electronic, the physical, the hardware things that understand where you are in space, and then all of the software to process that and make sure that the car turns left when it's supposed to turn left.
Yeah.
There are sufficiently few people in the world qualified to do that if you have a company and your company has hired a bunch of those people and you've produced a self-driving car, you're not going to want to fire all those people now that you have a self-driving car and now go into the business of manufacturing pens. You're going to say, okay, we have this very valuable resource, which is people who are at the leading edge of this type of artificial intelligence. So let's now orient our company around how we can best use those. Like, maybe self-driving is the key. So maybe now we should go for airplane autopilots, and we should go for helicopter autopilots, and we should go for marine autopilots. So what they would do is they would say, given what the vision that we want to pursue is the vision of automating intelligent self-driving vehicles. And then that's the capability that they really develop, and they end up having a unique advantage because there just aren't enough people out there for everyone to compete. So if they have all the people who can really do that well, then it gives them the ability to win in the marketplace. To bring this back to coaching, what's critical for you as a coach is to make sure that your executive or the person you're viewing actually knows what the heck they should be doing and what they shouldn't be doing. Because especially if the vision is muddy or ambiguous, which it often is, because there's no reason to believe the people at the top know what the heck they're doing or know how to align a business, then they can end up spending a lot of their time doing stuff that isn't valued by the organization or doesn't move the organization forward. And if they're measured and their compensation and their career path is based upon their ability to produce business success, you want to help them do something that's actually going to bring in dollars to the bottom line. Because whether or not you personally think that bottom line dollars should be the ultimate measure of the value that a company adds to society, it actually is what most people's compensation is based on. So you'll notice I phrase that away because I sometimes call myself the world's worst Harvard MBA because I don't actually believe that the purpose of life is to increase the bottom line of businesses. I think businesses are tools. And if a given business is not increasing the prosperity of everyone involved, customers, suppliers, employees, and the communities that they operate in, then I think we should just dissolve the business and get a better one. That is not a popular view. The popular view is all hail business. I'm like, screw it. No, just all hail the businesses that make the world a better place. Yay. Okay. So off my soapbox.
Yeah, go ahead. So I wanted to ask you, so as a coach, somebody who is already in the coaching business or somebody who wants to start in the coaching business, for somebody who's starting, what you've said so far might be a bit of a mouthful, like, it's a lot to take in. So if I'm starting in the coaching business and I would like to start, using and applying what you've just presented, what would be the best way to do that? What would be the best way to, implement, or what would be the first steps for me? Like, how do I apply this to me as a coach who works? Is this going to be a coaching for a company? Is this for a executive? Is this for a manager? How do you look at this?
Okay, well, there's two answers to that question. One is, how can you apply this in your own business? And the other one is, how can you apply the stuff we've been talking about to your clients?
Yeah,
and those are two different things. First of all, to your own business, and this is a mistake that so many coaches make. And by the way, I'm one of them. This was and has continued to be a huge problem for me, is I just market myself as a coach, right? What is the vision there? You want to have a vision that lets you say, these are the things I do, and these are the things I don't do. Or maybe opposite. These are the things I do, these are the things I don't do. And if you just call yourself an executive coach, that doesn't draw much of a line. And it certainly doesn't distinguish you from the other coaches around. However, if what you do is, and what you're known for is, I prepare people to give powerful presentations to their boards of directors, most people are not going to hire you, because most people don't give presentations to boards of directors. But if you're really good at that, and that's what you do, and the word gets out, that's that leads you to a whole set of other products, right? If your vision is, I help people like make powerful board presentations, great. You can coach them in their presentation skills. You can get products that help them do that. You can have image consultants who you work with to help them get their image together. You can create a bunch of templates, get a graphic designer to put together board templates and things that people can use, which look better and not as packaged as the things that come with PowerPoint or, whatever the thing is. You could, I'm kind of brainstorming here, but you could connect up with, a catering company to say, or an event planner to say, we want to be able to put on amazing board presentations, and this person, although if you're the one giving the presentation, anyway, I'm going off the rails here. But essentially, if you have your own vision, that will let you say, these are the things I do, these are the things I don't do, and will let you expand your business in ways other than just selling your time as a coach. Now, using this with your clients, if you're talking to an executive, the executive's responsibility is to develop and execute strategy, probably more to execute strategy. You want to coach that person to make sure they know what they should be doing, what is inside the vision, what is outside the vision, and make sure that what they're doing is aligned with other people. So you want them talking to other people and establishing relationships. And a lot of people at that level, I mean, some of them are really good at that, but a lot of them are so caught up in their work, they don't systematically establish the relationships and make sure that they are aligned with the other parts of the company. So that's one of the things that you want to do with your clients, is you want to make sure that you want to coach them in how to have conversations with the other people at their level, and with the people above, and with the first level of people below, to make sure that alignment is happening. What you're actually doing there is you are in essence being an organizational consultant. You're just doing it through your client to help them produce that kind of alignment. And then, of course, again, as a coach, you can then help them think through, if they have that alignment at the level of vision and you have the alignment at the level of strategy, what are then the behaviors and the projects and the things that they should do to be able to implement that strategy. And there, if you have a business background, you might have specific answers and specific ideas, or you just can become a brainstorming partner and you can help think things through. My experience is that at least the people who have hired me as a coach, generally they don't need help. Once they're at that point, they don't need help. They can figure out what things need to happen. The places that I usually end up working with them on are the people pieces, how do you connect with the other people at your level? How do you produce alignment? Because that's something that people are not taught to do. There are very few classes in that. And it's not always obvious to them that that's what they should be doing, because that's not necessarily part of their job at a lower level. So they haven't encountered that yet. They don't understand that that's a serious success skill. that they need. The other thing is I often end up coaching people in interpersonal skills, in things like mirroring and matching, or how to elicit people's criteria, or how to ask questions, right? Meta model here, how to ask questions that surface other people's assumptions. Because the higher you go, okay, I just want to be, I'm about to kind of like open up an entire next can of worms about applying NLP to business. Can I do that?
Yeah, of course. Go ahead.
All right. So the higher you go in a business, the more you're thinking is big chunk versus small chunk. So at the frontline level, let's use a manufacturing company for an example. At the frontline level, the things that frontline people are worried about is which buttons do I press? What's the quality of the thing coming out of off the assembly line? What are the dials that tell you whether the machines are overheating, etc. Very, very micro focus, short time horizon, small chunk. When you get moved up to a supervisor level, well, now you're not thinking about what do the specific dials say. What you're thinking about is how many units are we producing a day. Your time horizon isn't what's happening this instant. Your time horizon is generally maybe what's happening this hour or today or this week or this month. As you go up through the organization, right? And we even just saw this a minute ago with strategy and vision. The higher up you go in the organization, the bigger chunk and the more abstract the things you're thinking about are, and the longer term you're thinking. So when you're thinking about the vision, that's pretty much timeless. When you're thinking about the strategy might be several years. And then when you're thinking about projects might be a couple years as well, etc. So when you are coaching someone, one of the most common things that I have found in coaching people at different levels of an organization is a mismatch between how they think, what is their time horizon, how long, in NLP terms, how far out does their timeline go, and where are they on the chunk size. So when someone gets promoted and they've spent their entire career looking at dials and thinking about, is the thing coming off the assembly line right now, is that thing the proper quality? They have a short time horizon, small chunk. They get promoted up to supervisor, but they don't necessarily know that they now need to be a bigger chunk thinker with a slightly longer time horizon. And in fact, even if they figure that out, they may not know how to do that. This is where you as an NLP trained coach can really come in. You can, now I don't ever do explicit timeline work with someone. Like I wouldn't say, imagine your timeline. I might if I thought it was necessary. In general, it hasn't been necessary. But what I will do is I will say things like, okay, when you make decisions, how far ahead do you look? And I will train them to say, okay, well, as supervisor now, you should be looking at your daily output, especially if that's the reports that your manager wants. So I help people get to longer time horizons and then to bigger chunk. Now, the bigger chunk piece is hard, right? Interestingly, it's easier for someone to go from big chunk down to small chunk because they can kind of look inside the thing. So if I say this is a pen and someone says, what are the pieces? I can unscrew it and I can look and say, oh, look, it has springs. It has ink repositories. Going the other direction, however, is very hard because if what I do is I hand you this and I say, what's the bigger chunk? Well, you actually don't necessarily know. The bigger chunk might be a 4-color pen, which it was in this case, but maybe the bigger chunk is a 1-color pen, which is something different. Or maybe this was being used to prop open a door or something. No, this very small door. Maybe this was being used to prop over a very small door, or by a very, very tiny horde of barbarians to attack and invade a very tiny town. You simply don't know. So when you're helping someone move up a level, you need to essentially help them, and possibly yourself, because you may not know about all those contexts either. You need to help them ask questions of their bosses, of the people above them in an organization, to start to understand what is the chunk size and what is the time horizon, because different organizations have different chunk sizes. I think of this as a series of languages, that every level in an organization has its own language. And yes, chunk size is part of that, and chunk size and time horizon, but also what are the things that matter at that level of the organization. So as a frontline worker, you don't care whether the schedule is completely full. That's where the schedule of workers is completely full. If you're the cashier at McDonald's, all you care about is when are your shifts scheduled. Once you're a manager, now the kinds of conversations you have, you're no longer talking about what does this customer want for lunch. Now the conversations that you have are, do we have holes in the schedule? Is everyone accounted for? Are people showing up on time? Very different sets of conversations. Now you go up to a regional manager, and the conversations you have are no longer those conversations. Now the conversations are things like, what is the profitability of all the different stores? Are we getting the right inventory to the right stores so that they don't stock out? Are the store managers performing up to snuff, or do we need to get them training? So at every level, even though it's a direct career path up in terms of being promoted, every level has its own time horizon and its own things that matter and its own language, its own terminology. As NLP people, being trained to listen for someone's language, and you know that two different people may have two different languages in terms of like NLP clients. Well, now I'm just saying the different levels in an organization also have different languages. So one of the things that you can do to provide real value to your clients, if your client is being upwardly mobile in an organization, help them deduce and learn the language at the next level up. So for instance, one of the things that I have a client who we're specifically working. I do a lot of work where I help people at a mid-level get up to the C-suite or the executive level. And one of the things that we do is we say, now I want you to go around and start interacting with people a level above you, and just ask them, what's going on today? What do you think the important things are to be thinking about? Now, those of you who are all NLP trained, which is everyone watching this, you will understand when I say, what are the important things to be thinking about? And when my client says that to the people, what I'm doing is I'm having that client learn how to elicit criteria. But it's not just criteria in terms of decision criteria. What I am training my client to do is elicit the language that's being used at the next higher level up. So go talk to your VP and say what's important. The VP is not going to say, well, what's important is the dials on the machine. What the VP is going to say is, well, we're really trying to figure out if the XYZ initiative is going to succeed. All right, so that tells your client that the language is about initiatives and about whether those initiatives succeed or not. And that may not be the language that your client uses at their current level. Like maybe right now they're operating a machine, and so they're currently not talking about initiatives and they're not talking about success. Whereas at one level up, that's all they talk about is initiatives and success. So you're essentially teaching and helping your client elicit the language at each level, and then adopt that language as they move up through the organization. Now, one of the interesting tricks about this is what you may discover as the observer, as the coach. You may discover that the people at different levels are just using the wrong language. You may have your client go talk to their boss and say, what are you thinking about? And actually, I'll just I won't give a real example. I'll use a fake example. And let's say that you're a frontline worker and you go to your boss and say, what are you thinking about? And what your boss says is, oh, I'm really worried that the dials are, currently showing 10 out of 12 or something. Well, that's the wrong level for that boss to be thinking. That is a signal that the boss is thinking at the wrong level. So you want to help your client think through what are the implications of things like this, right? Because this is so here's what actually happens in an organization. Now we're going to zoom out. Instead of just thinking about your client, we're going to zoom out to the organization. Is you have people who get promoted. The people who are not your client who get promoted, they don't necessarily adjust their time horizon and their language. So they're still paying attention to all the lower level stuff. Now, unfortunately, you're not their coach. If you were, you would help them broaden what they're doing, but you're not. So now they are managing they're micromanaging all of their people, because the only thing they're thinking about is all the things that they would do if they were doing the job of the lower level people. Now, if you're coaching that lower level person, you now are coaching somebody who is at the same level, the same thought level as their supervisor. That's going to be tricky, because the supervisor isn't going to be looking at the things, is not going to be looking at the things that they should be looking at. They're going to be inappropriately micromanaging your person. So in that case, and we're kind of getting into pro level territory here. What you want to coach your client to coach their boss in the right things to think about. So let's say that the boss is obsessed about the dials and should be thinking about initiatives. What you would coach your client to do is you would say, go to your boss and ask your boss. So when your boss says the dial is a 10 out of 12, ask your boss, which initiatives do you think this is going to affect? And what that is going to do, one step removed, that's going to get the boss to pop up to the level of initiatives, which is hopefully the next level in the organization. But and then your client can frame their work in terms of, oh, okay, well, you know what, the stuff that I'm doing on my job is going to help with XYZ initiative, or is not going to help with XYZ initiative. So maybe we should change my responsibilities. But in essence, you as the coach are coaching certainly the person you're directly working with, and then possibly through that person, you may be training your person to coach the people above them or their peers to produce alignment. So you're really doing a piece of organizational design. You're just doing it all through your client, and you're doing it by thinking of everything as language, and you're doing it by having your client elicit the language from the people in the organization who know it, or you're doing it by having your client impose that language by presupposing it in the questions they ask their boss. Am I going like way too far and way too deep? I'm sitting here.
No, it's all good. It's all good.
Okay,
it's all good.
Good. I'm never sure. I'm like, did I just was that a 101 answer, or was that a graduate student level answer? I can't really tell, because at this point I just think this way.
Yeah, it was good. It was good. I liked it.
Okay, I can stop to take a breath, and if you have any specific question, we can go in a direction that you think is interesting, or I can just choose something and randomly start going.
I think I would say like, for instance, from what I get from your presentation so far, this would be a bit of a higher level of interaction, let's say. It's a kind of a meta perspective on working with clients as a coach, and that's of course that's totally fine. I'm thinking, like, for instance, if somebody is already seeing clients now, you mentioned that first they have to get a very clear understanding of the mission or vision of their clients, so then they can start helping the clients. And this would be for people really working with executive like executive coaches or business coaches. Is that correct, what I'm saying here?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And the alignment is really wherever in the organization your client is, they just need to be aligned with the next level up. Ultimately, the next level up, and the other and their peers. So that's really the underlying principle, is you want alignment up and alignment out.
Yeah. Okay. So alignment up and alignment out. Now, when, like, for somebody who is an executive coach, he will work with one of, or maybe several executives from that company. Is that all they should be doing? Maybe they need to work with, I don't know, top level management or middle management of the company? Is executive coaching related only to, like, the CEO of the company, or do you actually perform executive coaching at different levels of the company?
That depends on what the outcomes are and who's hiring you. At some point, what I've been describing turns into an organizational design consulting engagement, which is, you could think of that as coaching on an organizational level. If you're working with a single person, then you take the approach that I've been describing. But if I were hired, and I have been hired before, to work with an executive team, well, I want to make sure of a bunch of the same things. Does the executive team all have a unified idea of what they're trying to achieve? And if they don't, then any further work with them is not necessarily going to be useful. So first, you have to all agree on what the heck are we trying to do. If you think we're a medical devices company, and Chris thinks that we are a pen manufacturing company, and Henri thinks that we make glassware, then nothing else. It's not even going to matter what else we do. And where you go from there depends on what you're hired to do, because what you could do is you could say, okay, well, then given the vision of the company, let's figure out what the strategy should be, and figure out if the strategy that you're pursuing still is appropriate for the current market conditions. Or it may be that what you want to do is what they need is, given the strategy that's set, how do you communicate that strategy to the people in the company so that you align everybody and make sure that all of the efforts are going in the right direction? It really depends on what you're being hired to do. Frankly, there's no standard answer.
I got you. And so once you get hired, let's say you get hired by the executive coach, or you're hired by the owner of the company. Once it's like, is that the first step? Like, getting, like, let's say you are the owner of a company, you hire me as a coach. I'm an executive coach. You got a company with, let's say 15 employees, management and whatnot. So my first interaction with you should be about, hey, what is your vision and mission? Should that be like my very first question ask you in order for me to be able to help you?
You as the coach, the very first question you should be asking is, what outcome do you want? How will you know that you have it, right? You get the well-formed outcome from your client. And what role do you expect me to play in that? I mean, you're in business as a coach. You're not doing this to produce some giant cosmic perfect outcome. So the first thing you want to know is, what will they pay me for? And that's what you want to deliver. Now, you may determine that they need something different, right? And in NLP, this is at least one of the things that was pounded into me during my training, is someone will come to you with one problem. You'll do a little bit of diagnosis, and what you'll realize is their real problem is something else, but you still have to give them the thing that they came to you for.
But how can you do that if their problem is someplace else? How do you do that?
You have to give them both. You have to.
I actually had this question with several, both therapists and coaches, and in NLP practitioners as well, who are like, well, there is a fine line between doing therapy and doing coaching or doing counseling or whatever, because some said, you hire me as a coach, but really what you need is a therapist. So how it's like the example I just gave earlier, like, let's say you are the owner of a company and you want to have a more successful company, but as you hire me and I look into your business and I'm looking into your request, I can see there are some issues that maybe you personally would have to deal with before actually I can be able to help you with my coaching. So what do I say? I say, hey, dude, you got issues. Fix those, and then we can work on how do we do that.
Yep, you say that to them. You say you have, you have a drinking problem right now, and I, as a coach, I can't produce results if you're not capable of coming into work sober. So go get cleaned up. Here's a number for Alcoholics Anonymous. Here's a couple of great addiction therapists who I know, and come back when you're ready. And they may not hire you then, and that's fine. Because you don't want to end up being put in a position where you're trying to get an alcoholic to behave as a non-alcoholic, for example. So one is knowing the limits of what you can do. And I do run into this a lot. So I have a client right now who, well, let me try to articulate how I draw that line, because this is I think a really important line to draw. So first of all, I always try to ask myself, is the next step of producing the outcome from the person something that is within my area of expertise? So let's say I was helping somebody with a business problem and I help them figure out how to structure that, I help them figure out how to think about it from a business point of view and figure out, where is the money going? Where are the inefficiencies? What do they need to improve? Right? I'm competent to do that. I have training in that. I have helped run companies. So that's well within my area of expertise. And then, because I have a trusted relationship with my client, then they come to me one day and I say, let's say I say, the next thing you need to do is you need to have a heart-to-heart talk with your VP of manufacturing, because it sounds like they're not delivering. So you need to go and sit down with them and explain that here are the targets, here's what they actually produced, and they're not delivering. If my client then says to me, oh my gosh, I'm so intimidated by that idea, I'm really scared, I now have to ask myself, do I believe that this fear that they have is something that I can help with and that I ethically can help with because I feel like I have enough mastery over it? So what I would usually do in this situation is I would say, well, tell me a little bit about the fear. And if they say, oh gosh, well, I think about that, and then I think, oh, it might go wrong, Now, listen, they're giving me an NLP strategy. They think about this meeting and they think it might go wrong. I'll say to them, well, if you think about the meeting and you think it might go right, how do you react? And they go, oh, well, it's less scary. Then I will actually sit down and do some NLP work with them, maybe do some swish patterns or whatever, so that they are more confident about the meeting. If they look at me and I say, well, if you think it might go right, what would happen? If they look at me and they go, oh my God, but I know that it won't go right because when I was 3 years old, my father used to beat me with a belt, and they burst into tears. I say, you know what? Even though I might be able to do a change history or a belief or, whatever, right? That's not the business I want to be in. I don't want to suddenly become someone's therapist, because there could be a hell of a lot of stuff going on that not only is is not stuff that I want to be doing. Like that's not the job I want to be, or I would be a therapist. But it could well get into all kinds of stuff that I'm really not qualified to deal with. I mean, just because I know NLP, I am reasonably sure that there are plenty of things in the world that can't be fixed with NLP. NLP, I think, is a great explanatory tool, but I am not convinced that, and I was for many years, I was like, oh, NLP can be used to solve everything. And I've become a little bit more nuanced in my view. And I would say it can point the direction to it, but the actual mechanisms and interventions involved, they don't all, there are conditions people have that are not, I have found at least, that are not amenable to at least my NLP intervention. Or that I think that the risk of failure carries too dire consequences, right? Like if someone's trying to decide whether or not to get a divorce, don't talk to me about that. Talk to a therapist or a marriage counselor, because I don't want the responsibility for the magnitude of that decision to be on my conscience if you make a decision and it ruins your life. I'm like, that's right. I will help you think it through. I'll help you make a list of pros and cons. I will inform you of resources you can use to save your marriage, if you're currently married. But I'm not, I kind of look as a coach. As a coach, I look at the boundaries of what I do as decisions. Basically, I help people make decisions. And if necessary, I give them the education that they need to make those decisions, right? I teach them about the language. I teach them about the chunk size. I might have to teach them business concepts. But ultimately, they're the ones who make the decisions. And I don't step over that line. I will not make a decision for someone else. I'll tell them what I would do if I were in their position, and I'll tell them why. But I will also, if I'm going to do that, I will almost always follow it up with, and here's why I think your decision, why you can't just assume my decision is right for yours. I want to, that's the line that I want to draw. So I guess that's, I'm not sure if that answers your question.
But, for sure.
Okay,
Absolutely. Yeah. That was, that was great. Now, we could go on and on and on and on for like another.
I told you when you said you wanted to schedule a time, I'm like, dude, I am a hard person to interview, because I will just talk until you shut me up.
It's perfect. It's perfect. But let me say this, because we would have to wrap up this, and I know there's there've been a lot of points that you've raised, and a lot of people will be very interested in going deeper with this. How can people get in touch with you? How can they reach out to you? How can they learn from you? How they can connect with you?
Sure. I would say broadly speaking, the easiest way is to just go to my website, which is steverrobbins.com, STEVERROBBINS.com, and use the contact link to send me an email. That's really the best way to reach me. I also have a mailing list. As we're recording this, now it may be different by the time this is published, but as we're recording this, I'm actually doing a big shift in my business, which I'm not ready to announce yet. So, so what I would say is reach out to me through the contact page of my website, and, tell me what's up, what you're interested in, what it is that I can help with. And if it's something that I do, I can help. If it's not, I can point you at resources, or maybe create a custom offering or program. I mean, I'm very much in a place of being responsive to the market right now as I go through this transition.
Perfect. Awesome. So everyone, go ahead and search for Steve Robbins. He's got so much to offer and so much for you to learn from. And check out his website. we will now take a quick break. We'll see you after the break. We'll see you, after the break today or for the next presentation, or we'll see you tomorrow, depending when this presentation is scheduled in our program. Thank you so much for your time, Stiver, and I'm looking forward to connecting with you again in the future for our future programs and events. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Awesome. So everyone, let's take a quick break. We'll see you after the break for the next presentation. We'll see you tomorrow. Stay tuned.